Shalom, Izzy here with Holy Language Institute at holylanguage.com. Welcome to the 10th and final little talk that we've been having about problems with sacred name teachings and also sacred name Bibles. In this last one, we are going to tie together several of the themes in our previous three little discussions and talk about how sacred name teachings breed unconscious anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is a loaded word, I know. It conjures up horrible images in our memories and imaginations. So the vast majority of people would never say they're anti-Semitic. It would be like saying that you worship Satan, or that you practice cannibalism, or that you listen to Justin Bieber. So you may be experiencing strong emotions in response to hearing me equate sacred name teachings with anti-Semitism and with the music of Justin Bieber. If that's you, please hear me out and consider what I'm about to say, because it's coming from a heart of love for the Jewish people and for you. I'm talking about these things because I care. And Justin Bieber does care too, by the way. He even has a Hebrew tattoo of the name Yeshua, in case you didn't know. It's for real. He has a tattoo right there, and it says Yod Shin Vav Ayin, Yeshua. Back to me. I've spent Justin Bieber and I are both Canadians, so, we're very, 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 very distantly related because we're both Canadians, and that's as far as it goes. Never mind the Hebrew stuff. When it comes to me, I've spent most of my adult life around the Messianic movement and around the Jewish community. I've spent literally thousands of hours studying the scriptures and history, and have come to the realization that some things don't add up. I have to say also that I feel a deep sense of urgency about this message. The way I've been talking in this whole little series about problems with sacred name teachings, there's an urgency there. Ask anyone who knows me well, and they'll tell you that I hate conflict. Like, seriously. I'll avoid disagreements and friction at almost any cost. Like, it's actually a weakness of mine. But I see a train wreck coming, and this is my effort at getting as many people off the sacred name train as possible before they crash. That's where I'm coming from with these talks. And interestingly enough, it happens to be the day of the solar eclipse that I'm filming all 10 of these talks. I didn't plan that. It just happened to be that way. It definitely gives it more of an urgent sense, and maybe even a sense of a prophetic urgency, at least for me personally. So having said that, let's talk about anti-Semitism. It's important to understand that there are different kinds of anti-Semitism, almost like strains of a disease. Some are more open and in your face, like cancer when it's metastasized. Others are quieter and more subtle. But that doesn't mean they don't affect you. Think of someone you know who's outright aggressive versus someone you know who's passive-aggressive. Like, they're both dangerous and they can both drive you crazy. They'll just do it in different ways. That's like anti-Semitism. So it can lie dormant, undetected for years, until something happens to trigger it, and it suddenly flares up. For the sake of understanding, let's call these two strains conscious and unconscious anti-Semitism. Conscious anti-Semites hate the Jews, and they know they hate the Jews, and they'll tell you they hate the Jews. They may have adopted conspiracy theories or ethnic myths to justify their hatred, but the bottom line is that they hate the Jews as Jews. Unconscious anti-Semites, on the other hand, they don't hate the Jews, but they don't care about them either. There's like a coldness there, and indifference. Unconscious anti-Semitism may not scream death to the Jews, but it's definitely not interested in doing life with the Jews in any way, shape, or form either. It ignores them, treats them as irrelevant, and is closed to even learning about them. Kind of like that. Remember that ultimately love is a verb, and so is hate. So sometimes all you need to do to hate the Jews is nothing. Think of the millions of Europeans during the Second World War who just went about their lives while their Jewish neighbors were being rounded up and carted off. Their lack of action was caused by their implicit anti-Semitism. It paralyzed them and made them complicit with the explicit anti-Semitism of the Nazis. So, how could we phrase that? Unconscious, implicit anti-Semitism goes hand in hand with explicit, conscious anti-Semitism, and indeed, it enables it ultimately. One does not simply love and do nothing. That's why it's often easier to detect unconscious anti-Semitism by watching for what isn't there, rather than for what is. For instance, why do some preachers never talk about the Jewish people? Why doesn't praying for the peace of Jerusalem happen in some churches? And seriously, how can seminaries crank out graduates who never learned a sniff about Judaism? These are all possible symptoms of unconscious anti-Semitism. You can't tell for sure, though, until a potential trigger event happens. Someone in the church wants to host a Passover Seder, for instance. A family member starts keeping the feasts. A seat of Jewish studies is proposed. At that point, if there's unconscious anti-Semitism, it'll begin pushing back, usually masking itself behind Bible verses quoted out of context, or sometimes by criticism of the modern state of Israel. I'm sure that if you might have encountered a line of reasoning similar to this. Sociologists have also recognized several different types of anti-Semitism. Of particular note are the categories of racial anti-Semitism and religious anti-Semitism. Now, racial anti-Semitism is plain, old-fashioned Jew hatred. The Nazis are probably the best example of this. Religious anti-Semitism, on the other hand, is Judaism hatred. And I'm sorry to say this, but Christianity in its darker chapters has probably been the best example of this. Did you ever notice this? One is racial anti-Semitism, one is religious anti-Semitism, and they are not treated the same. But it's extremely important to understand this about anti-Semitism. Hatred of Judaism is hatred of Jews. Think about it for a second. Without Judaism, there would be no Jewish people, because it's our religion that makes us Jews. So, if you say you love us as Jews, then you must also love our Judaism, which makes us Jews, right? Conversely, if you hate Judaism, then you also hate us as Jews, because, again, it's our Judaism that makes us Jews. And guess what? Hating Judaism and hating us as Jews is anti-Semitism. What I said about the words Messianic and Jewish also apply here. Jews and their Judaism are also like Siamese twins. Take one from the other, and you'll kill them both. You can't separate Jews and Judaism. And this is something that I think the Christian world really needs to think about. Let's say that you have a Jewish person who becomes a believer in Jesus. What do you do with that person? What do you encourage them to do? Do you take them out for a ham sandwich and congratulate them on not being Jewish anymore? On leaving the Jewish community? Tell them, yay, you're free from the law? Stop and think about that for a second. What would happen if all the Jewish people in the world became believers in Jesus and did that? Within a couple generations, what would have happened to the Jewish people? There would be no Jewish people. The Germans had a word for that. Judenrein, a world that is free of Jews. That's what would happen. So you really need to stop and think about that. Are you sure you want to encourage Jewish believers in Yeshua to stop practicing Judaism, to separate themselves unnecessarily from the Jewish community? If you actually accomplish that objective, then Hitler's dream would come true, because there would be no more Jews within a couple of generations. They would be a relic of the past. They would be a historical community that no longer exists, that were gobbled up by Christianity. You don't want that. God doesn't want that. That's not going to happen. So let's bring this discussion home. Hopefully, you're beginning to see how the sacred name world is a breeding ground for anti-Semitism. Sacred name teachings may not promote conscious racial anti-Semitism, but they are infecting people with religious anti-Semitism. A hatred of Judaism, which is sometimes unconscious, but in many cases is very conscious. The bottom line is that teaching people to use God's name in flagrant disregard for Jewish sensitivities, it's anti-Semitic. Making up your own version of Hebrew instead of learning to pronounce it the way the Jewish people pronounce it, that's anti-Semitic. Same goes for Messiah's name. Coming up with variant forms instead of respecting the Messianic Jewish movement in our usage of the name Yeshua, that's anti-Semitic. And not bothering to learn how to handle holy books and ignoring Jewish feelings on the matter is anti-Semitic. Again, is that conscious anti-Semitism? No, not necessarily. But those actions are anti-Semitic actions. This is also true of replacement theology. Anything that causes people to think or act as if God gave the Torah to them instead of the Jewish community is anti-Semitic. Likewise, any way of thinking or acting that displaces the centrality of national Israel's ongoing relationship with God is anti-Semitic. I know these are strong words, and I'm not saying this to accuse anyone or make them feel bad. If you use the sacred name Bible, you may be feeling shocked right now at the suggestion that some of your practices are anti-Semitic. You have a good heart, and I validate that. You're sincerely trying to follow the Father, and I truly believe that. And you may even have a genuine love for Israel. You're obviously not an evil person. So how could anyone accuse you of anti-Semitism? If that's you, I do hope you'll consider the possibility that you may have inadvertently absorbed some teachings that were tainted with religious anti-Semitism, even though your heart was in the right place and you did have good intentions. Please spend some time prayerfully considering this question. Is it possible you could have picked up some practices that are actually anti-Semitic and you weren't even aware of it? If that's what happened, don't feel bad. Like, seriously, don't feel bad. Just respond to this invitation to let go of those things and step into a new relationship of love, respect, and understanding towards the Jewish people and towards the Messianic Jewish movement. You can just, kind of say this. Okay, so on a practical level, what are some practical things you can do to take that positive step? Here are my suggestions. Begin reverently calling God Adonai, or Lord, instead of insisting on using his name every chance you get. Call our Messiah Yeshua, instead of using some version that isn't even real Hebrew. Handle books containing God's name reverently. Be careful not to put them on the ground or put stuff on top of them. And I would even suggest that you retire your sacred name Bible and start using a Messianic Jewish Bible or even a regular Christian Bible. If you're not sure which would be best for you, my translation review series at holylanguage.com can help you find the Bible that's right for you. Because when it comes to my suggestion that you start using a Messianic Jewish Bible or even a regular Christian Bible, you may be responding like this right now. There are a couple of concrete things. These are a couple of concrete things you can do. But the most important thing is the heart. If you're doing what you can to actively cultivate an attitude of love towards the Jewish people and respect towards their Judaism, then the next step will be revealed to you. Follow that leading. I guarantee it will be a beautiful journey, and the Father's name will truly be set apart through your life. And this is the 10th and the final little conversation that I wanted to have with you about sacred name teachings and sacred name Bibles and some serious problems with them. If you've made it this far, really congratulations to you. Thank you for hearing me out. Thanks for hearing my heart. And thanks also for seriously considering some of the evidence and the historical information that I have presented here. If you'd like to track with my ongoing series reviewing Bibles from Jewish and Messianic Jewish perspectives and also from Hebrew roots and sacred name perspectives, come check us out at holylanguage.com. Under resources, you will see the translation review page where you can keep track of those. We have several other courses and ongoing series of lessons. Our focus as a ministry and as a movement around the world is simply on discipleship to our Master, following Yeshua in a Hebrew way, studying the Bible, learning some of the original language of the Bible in Hebrew, learning about the Jewish context of the Bible, and doing that together, doing that as a community. So I'd love to have you join us. I'd love to have you check us out. Come say hi at holylanguage.com. Use the contact page if you have any questions. And I pray right now for you. I pray for me. I pray for all of us as followers of Yeshua, that the Father's name will be set apart in our lives, that his reputation will be advanced in this world, and that truly we can do our parts, each one of us, and all of us together as a community, to make him look good.